Hey guys, we are going to start with a lecture for Chapter 8 about parenting styles. Now, this is material that you might not find in the book, or it may not be very well described in the book. I wanted to add in a few extra things about different parenting styles, just to kind of make sure that everyone's familiar with a lot of these terms. If you take child development, you might go over through some of this. But I do want to make sure that everyone kind of not only knows the terms, but kind of realizes that it's not as easy, and it's not as absolute as others might kind of think it is. So there's four basic types that we talk about in psychology. We have authoritative, authoritarian, indulgent or permissive, and neglectful or uninvolved. And so many of what we do, many of the kinds of individual types can be sort of categorized into one of these four major ones, but there are a lot of terms and a lot of even new parenting styles that are becoming more popular in terms of what we're talking about here. But they all generally fit into these basic categories. So we base these categories based off of level of demandingness, which is how demanding are the parents, and how warm are the parents. So level of warmth, how inviting are they? How are they likely to give affection, things like that. So authoritative is where you have a very high level of demandingness. The parent likes to control the behavior, know what's going on. There are rules in place, and for example, curfews and things like that, and certain things that a child can and can't do. But it's also matched with a high level of warmth. So the parent is very responsive to the child, or adolescent. The parent will talk with the child, talk with, and go to their level, provide affection and warmth when it's needed. This authoritative, and we're going to talk sort of about which one is the best. This one tends to be the best received. Now, at the end of this, I'm going to talk about sort of like there is no one size fits all, but we do find that when we compare all of these together, the authoritative seems to be really one of the best considered parenting styles or parenting types across the board. So it's kind of like a good default to think about, but we're going to talk about differences in children very briefly at the end of this here. But I just kind of want to point out that this is, high level of control of behavior, meaning that the parents know what's going on. They're setting boundaries. They're being also very responsive to their child. So they're listening to their child and seeing why is it that they might have misbehaved, or, listening to their needs and their wants. The next type of parenting style is authoritarian parenting, where there's a high level of behavioral control, very demanding parents, but low warmth, low responsiveness. So this is where you might typically see that, you violated curfew and you get immediately punished without the parent asking you what happened, without the parent saying, I care about you and I want you to be safe, or, providing a lot of affection and providing a lot of warmth. Instead, it's very strict and sort of more cold sort of type of parenting. The next kind is indulgent or permissive parenting. This is where we like to see, you call this kind of like hippie parenting, where you see it's very, very permissive in the sense that there's not a lot of demandingness. The parent might say, do what you feel is best, and so let's say you get a C on a subject. The parent might say, oh, you know what, it's okay. You'll just try again. And, it's not a big deal. And they don't really have a whole lot of demands from their children. They don't set really strict boundaries. The child may not have a bedtime, might not have a curfew, but there is this really high level of parental responsiveness, really high level of warmth. They're the type of a parent to say, well, but I really love you, and that's all that matters, is that we're together, and that we're happy. But I don't really care if you fail, or you leave school, or, you meet your curfew. There is no curfew. There's no boundaries. So it's a very permissive type parenting, and allows a child to indulge in behaviors. Like, for example, if a child says, I want ice cream for breakfast, a permissive or indulgent parent might say, okay, sweetie, I love you so much. Let's get you what you want. Okay. Now, the final type here is the neglectful or uninvolved parent. There's not a lot of demandingness. Not only do they not set boundaries, they don't necessarily really care what the child does, but there's also very low warmth or responsiveness. So the parent might actually be completely sort of uninvolved, might not be present, but when the child needs affection or needs something, that the parent is not providing that. So this is a very sort of neglectful style of parenting where the kid can do whatever they want, but they're not getting that warmth that they would get, for example, in indulgent or permissive parenting. So those are the 4 basic types. Now, when we talk about awareness styles, this is sort of involved in those types of parenting styles. You can kind of place them in there and see that they can fit in different places depending on the level of demandingness, the level of affection. But we're talking about more in terms of awareness. So this is something that we would consider really high level of awareness in terms of to the child's needs. So we have 3 basic types of awareness styles that are considered high level. And these are, some of these terms you're gonna notice have developed more recently, or they've always been there, but we're calling them something different. And so I'm going to talk about a few of these high level ones. Positive parenting, very similar in the sense of like positive psychology. They want the child to be happy, fulfilled. They want the child to experience some meaningfulness, and then they're always looking to have that child grow. And so we're, a positive parenting style is looking forward to that child meeting their own happiness and meeting their own potential and meeting those goals. With the next type, which is attachment parenting. So typically it's called attachment parenting. That's sort of like, if you go to any parenting forums, it's usually what they're calling it, is attachment parenting. But it's also known as intuitive parenting or natural parenting. And in the very funny sort of nickname world, it's also called granola. So it's like a granola type parenting, which is kind of silly, but these are some of the names you might actually hear people called by when they're this type of parent. So when it comes to attachment parenting, what this is really a very strong focus on the psychological and emotional bond between the child and caregiver. So this could be the mother and the child, the father and the child, whatever. There's a lot of things like baby wearing, so wearing the baby wherever you go, not putting the baby down, not engaging in cry it out, which is when you put a child down, for example, for sleep training or for napping, or for going to sleep, and letting the child cry for a period of time. Instead, this is where the parent assesses the infant's needs very quickly and very efficiently and very consistently and quickly meets those needs. So as soon as the baby cries, the parent is there figuring out what to do. If the child is hungry, they're fed as quickly as possible. If the child needs to be changed as quickly as possible. And this is, also as the child gets older, those needs are being assessed very quickly and met very quickly. So instead of, making the child wait, those immediate needs are taken care of very quickly. And this is kind of like a very natural sort of response to children, that the idea is if the child is crying, then there's something wrong and that child needs to be taken care of. There's a need that needs to be taken care of or addressed. So this is a type of parenting that does a lot of very natural things. A lot of attachment parenting mothers will breastfeed, and they'll breastfeed for an extended period of time, and it's trying to, in the best of ways, be as natural of a parent as possible. The final high-level awareness style is the unconditional or conscious parenting. This is where this is an unconditional acceptance. The child needs to feel accepted, needs to be unconditionally loved, regardless of what that child does. So let's say the child breaks your favorite vase, or does something that you really don't like, or goes against your values. So let's say you're a very religious family that doesn't believe in homosexuality, and your child comes out and says, I'm homosexual. Then if you engage in this high level awareness style of parenting, you would unconditionally love that child and say, it doesn't matter. I don't care. I don't care. If you go against my beliefs, I love you anyway. Okay. And so another idea between this sort of unconditional parenting style is that that child should be able to meet his or her absolute potential. So it's very similar to the sense of positive parenting, that a focus is on that child meeting his or her goals and meeting that absolute potential, but also in that process feeling unconditionally accepted and unconditionally loved. And you'll see overlap between a lot of these high level awareness styles, where, in attachment parenting, you might see that there's also this unconditional aspect of it, where, the parent wants to engage in this, I love you regardless of what you do, what you say, who you are. So there's a lot of overlap here. It's just we kind of see them sort of categorized in this particular way. Now, there are some what we refer to as sort of unfortunate parenting styles. Now, this is a matter of opinion, of course, and not everyone agrees, especially those who engage in this kind of parenting style. They say, no, this is the right way to do it. This is the way I want to do it for my child. One of those particular styles is called helicopter parenting. And if you deal with adolescents, then you're going to, if you're working with adolescents in your career, you're absolutely going to encounter the helicopter parent. I'm going to pause this show really quick, and I'm going to come right back. I just have something to take care of. Sorry about that. So just kind of getting back on track here. If you're going to work with an adolescent or an adolescent population, you will absolutely encounter the helicopter parent. And this is where we call it helicopter parenting. And again, these are sort of, thinking about some of these newer terms that are popping up over the course of time. A helicopter parent, this idea of them hovering over their children. We see things like, they may be very fearful of losing their child, very overprotective of their child, and they are very, very controlling of the child. So, and this is like every area of their life that they're very heavily controlled. So you might see them in the school system intervening on their child's behalf. If their child has a behavioral issue, then we might see a parent come in and say, well, it's not their fault. And, you need to not punish them. And so that's typically where we see a lot of issues with helicopter parenting is that helicopter parent will come in and really fight for their child very, very ferociously, but at the same time, may not want their child to take responsibility for their actions. They tend to be very, very overprotective. If there's, anything that's even slightly askew, they're the first ones in and complaining to either the teacher or to higher level officials. So again, this is not necessarily, this is considered an unfortunate parenting style, but just because a parent is a helicopter parent, it doesn't necessarily mean that's a bad thing. There are reasons why some parents are helicopter parents. It may not be that they are necessarily trying to control the child's life or the adolescent's life. They may have become a helicopter parent because their child may have some severe behavioral issues, or if they have special needs, or if there's something that has sort of warranted this kind of type of overprotective behavior. So some say, well, oh no, if you just back off, then the child will be able to succeed and do well. And that may not be the case for that child. So we're going to talk a little bit about sort of no one size fits all. So don't think that just because we have this kind of parenting style, then it necessarily means it is, that you're dooming the child for failure. It may be that this is the kind of parenting style that that child needs, and that is how they're going to succeed. And then, of course, we have to consider how are they going to develop outside of adolescence and beyond adolescence into adulthood. But we're going to talk about that in just a minute. Another style of parenting that's considered unfortunate is the narcissistic parent. Now, this is one that's considered a pretty unfortunate and bad situation. And we can see individuals who have, for example, narcissistic personality disorder or borderline personality disorder as a parent, that can be very detrimental to a child. And this style itself is pretty detrimental. So essentially, narcissism is when, you think that, you're great and you're the best, and that you're awesome, to a very, very troubling degree. And so parents who are narcissistic in this sort of style of parenting, the parents will actually identify the child's accomplishments as their own. They sort of see them as an extension of themselves. And so what this tends to translate to is whatever that parent wants for themselves or had wanted for themselves as a child, they now use their own child to live out their dreams, their goals, and their fantasies. So let's say that the parent always wanted to be a baseball star. That parent might really push their child very, very, very hard into a baseball career. Maybe they're, making them go to camps, and they're making the child, put a sport as a priority because that's what they wanted when they were younger. And a lot of times what ends up happening is the child doesn't want that. They want their own things, and they have their own hopes and dreams and goals. And so the parent kind of takes that from them and pushes them to whatever they wanted when they were younger, what they wanted for themselves. And what ends up happening is the parents will control the child or the adolescent very tightly, and then the child or adolescent doesn't get a chance to grow for themselves. They don't get to discover their own interests and be able to meet their own potentials. They are sort of stuck into whatever boundaries are set by that narcissistic parent. So this can be very unfortunate for the child, and this is one of the styles that is considered a poor parenting style. We also see tiger parenting it's considered an unfortunate parenting style. Now, this is where we see a really high level of demandingness. Now, this is beyond the authoritarian. This is extreme levels of demandingness, but we also see high warmth. In this right here, we see some really strict boundary control, like very, very strict. Not just, okay, you have a curfew. An authoritarian style versus authoritative, I'm just going to go back real quick to just kind of remind you guys. The authoritative style is more of you have a set boundary, but there's flexibility there. Okay. So when it comes to like if a child misses a curfew, let's say an adolescent comes in at 11 when they should come at 10. There's some flexibility there with authoritative parents. They're willing to listen out, they're willing to listen to the child or the adolescent, and they're trying to figure out, okay, what's the best way to solve this? So it may be that they say, okay, well, from, on the weekends, we'll extend your curfew. Or, they may say, no, this is the reason why we want you to meet this. Now, authoritarian parents, you meet the curfew, there's this high level of demandingness, but there's not that much of that communication or warmth. They're like, no, you didn't meet it, therefore you're punished. But so authoritative parenting almost seems like it's tiger parenting, but the level of demandingness is a lot higher, and there's a lot more control. So in a case of tiger parenting, what we see is that a lot of times kids aren't allowed to watch TV, play games, play on their tablet, or play on video games or things like that. A lot of times they're not allowed to have they're allowed to have friends, but they're not really allowed to engage in a lot of social activity. For example, they may not be allowed sleepovers. They may not be allowed play dates or extensive play dates. There's a lot of times very strict boundaries, very strict rules that, okay, you're not allowed to get anything less than an A. And if you do, you'll get punished or you have to work outside of class. And that's also a typical requirement, is that a child goes to school and they learn what they learned there, but then they come home, and not only do they have to do the homework that they're assigned for school, but the parents actually assign additional homework outside of school that they're required to work on. Children are also expected to excel in other areas, for example, in music. Sports isn't usually a very typical Tiger parenting um, one of their sort of areas, but it tends to be things like, music or other languages, something that's more academic is usually what tends to be a major focus. So the child might be, taking piano lessons, might be, taking ballet lessons, might be doing something that is they're expected to excel at outside of academics specifically, and that they're supposed to do well in all these areas, and it's tightly controlled by the parents. And it may or may not reflect what the child wants to do. We do see children of Tiger parents come in and say that that's the way they like it. They like, having a lot of stuff to do, and they enjoy the competition, and they want to do, and they want to excel. So it just depends on the child, which really brings us back to this idea of the style of parenting. So, like I said previously, every child is different. They may react differently to each style of parenting. Different styles may work on different kids in the same household, in the same family. So you might have what we like to refer to, we have a wild child, or is what we like to refer to them as spirited. A very spirited child may not really work well with a really tightly controlled environment. Maybe they're better suited with a permissive parent. We might have a child who's, very, very determined to excel in academics and wants the challenge and wants the competition. They may do better having a Tiger parent. They may do really well. We also see that each child may have different needs. And this includes multiple children from the same family. If a child has special needs, then they're going to require a different kind of parenting. If they have to take medications, if they have to, meet certain requirements, or they have to have certain accommodations at their school, they're going to need a more involved parent, making sure that those accommodations are met and making sure that the child is reaching their full potential. We also might see a child who's socially immature. They might be younger in the sense than their age. So you might see a 16-year-old coming in with a social maturity of a 12-year-old. And so that person, a child, might need more control, or they might need a better advocate in terms of a parent that might look a little bit more like a helicopter parent. But really, when it comes down to it, there's no absolute right answer, and there's no one size fits all for every child. Yes, we talk about this, and I'm going to kind of put you back to the very beginning. Yes, we talk about authoritative parenting being very, it tends to be sort of a default, very good style of parenting where you have boundaries, but yet you're flexible with those boundaries. There's a high level of warmth, right? That seems to be kind of a generic sort of one size fits all, but really when it comes back to it, it just really depends on the child. And it depends on the parent. It depends on the capabilities. There's a lot of things there that you have to consider. So hopefully this was helpful. There is never, even though there's a million books on parenting, there is absolutely no absolute right answer when it comes to it. I just have to kind of do the best that you can. But hopefully this kind of sums up the major parenting styles. And if you have any questions, you can use the question forum, or you can email me directly, whichever works best for you. So I will see you virtually, and good luck on your tests and quizzes for this week.